I never thought my own grandmother would deny me, not in front of the entire family. Not like that. It happened on a warm Sunday afternoon, during the grand Carter family reunion. Everyone was dressed in white, smiling for photos, laughing like we were some perfect dynasty. I walked up to her, Grandma Margaret, with a trembling smile, holding the bouquet I'd brought just for her. But she looked straight through me, like I was a stranger. "Who invited you here?" she said, her voice sharp enough to silence the music. "You are not my granddaughter." For a second, I thought I misheard her. But then the whispers began, soft, poisonous, spreading through the crowd like smoke. My aunt looked away, my father froze, and my stepmother, she smiled. Every heartbeat felt louder than the applause that followed Rachel's name. The granddaughter Grandma did claim. That day, in front of everyone I called family, I lost my name. And in that silence, I decided I'd take it back. People often say the Carter family is the picture of elegance. Our family photos are always perfectly framed, every smile rehearsed, every flaw hidden behind expensive clothes and polite laughter. But no camera has ever captured what really happens behind those perfect smiles. I grew up watching my family from the edges of the room, like a guest who forgot her invitation. My mother died when I was 8, and soon after, my father married Lydia. She was young, beautiful, and everything my grandmother approved of. From that day on, the warmth in our house changed. Lydia brought her own daughter, Rachel, and a new kind of silence settled between us. At family dinners, I'd try to join their conversations, about vacations, business deals, new dresses, but my words always seemed to fall flat. Lydia would smile that flawless smile and say, "Oh, Emily, you wouldn't understand, dear." Then she'd turn to Rachel, laughing softly, as if I'd never spoken. Grandma Margaret adored Rachel, called her the pride of the Carter women. Whenever Rachel entered a room, Grandma's eyes lit up. But when I tried to help in the kitchen or serve the guests, she'd wave me away gently, saying, "You should rest, Emily. Leave the important things to your sister." That word, sister, always stung. Every reunion, I told myself this year would be different. This year, Grandma would see me, not as the quiet daughter of a forgotten woman, but as a Carter, her blood, her legacy. I worked hard, graduated with honors, even opened my own small art studio. But when my father introduced me at gatherings, it was always with polite distance. "This is Emily, my eldest." No pride. No warmth. Just duty. Rachel, meanwhile, lived like the sun. Grandma showered her with praise, gifts, and all the attention I once craved. She wore my mother's jewelry, the same necklace Grandma said she'd kept safe for me. When I asked about it once, Lydia laughed softly and said, "Oh, dear, it suited Rachel better." Still, I smiled. I kept smiling. Through birthdays where my name was forgotten, through holidays where my seat was moved farther down the table. Because deep down, I believed love could be earned if I just tried harder. But the signs were there, little cracks beneath the surface. I'd catch Grandma whispering to Lydia when I entered the room. Conversations would stop mid-sentence. Rachel once called me our family's mystery girl and laughed when I didn't understand. I ignored it all. I told myself I was imagining things. Until the day the reunion invitation arrived, sealed with the Carter family crest. My heart fluttered. Maybe this was my chance to finally belong. But when I looked closer, I noticed something strange. Under family members attending, my name was missing. And that was the first sign that something far deeper and darker was waiting for me. The reunion weekend began like a scene from a family magazine, shining chandeliers, a golden buffet, and the Carter crest embroidered on every napkin. I arrived early, clutching the gift I'd bought for Grandma Margaret, a framed sketch of her childhood home. I'd drawn it myself, hoping it would remind her that I still belonged to her story. But the moment I walked through the door, I could feel it, the chill beneath the smiles. Lydia's voice floated across the room before I even saw her. "Oh, Emily," she said, her tone sugar-sweet. "We didn't think you'd come. You've been so distant lately." I forced a smile. I wouldn't miss it. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Just remember, darling, this reunion is for family." Her words stung, but I brushed them off. I told myself not to react. The Carters always believed in appearances, and I refused to let her see me break. Throughout the evening, I noticed the small humiliations, Rachel being called to the front when Grandma toasted the future of the Carter name, Lydia whispering to guests while glancing at me, the awkward silence whenever I approached a group. When the family photographer called for pictures, I stood next to my father, hoping to blend in. But Grandma's voice cut through the chatter. Rachel, stand here beside me. Emily, dear, maybe step to the side so we can fit everyone properly. Everyone laughed politely, as if nothing had happened. But I felt myself shrinking inside. Later that night, as dinner was served, the conversation turned toward inheritance, how Grandma was planning to secure the family's legacy. Uncle Peter joked, "Well, Rachel's got the charm, so she'll probably inherit Grandma's pearls." Lydia laughed. And Emily, well, she's always had her drawings. I tried to smile, but my hands were trembling. My art, the one thing that gave me pride, was turned into a punchline. Then Rachel leaned over, her voice just loud enough. "You know, Emily, people are talking. They say you might not even be a Carter by blood." I froze. "What did you just say?" She smirked. "It's just gossip, relax. But Grandma doesn't like uncertainty. You know how she is about appearances." My stomach twisted. Gossip. That word felt like poison. I scanned the room. Grandma's eyes were downcast. Lydia was hiding a smile. My father looked at his plate. No one defended me. That night, I overheard them talking, Lydia, Rachel, and Grandma, through the half-closed study door. "She doesn't need to know anything," Lydia whispered. "She's not one of us," Grandma replied softly. And then Lydia's voice again, dripping with satisfaction. "Exactly. One false rumor, and she'll back away on her own." My heart shattered. It wasn't just gossip, it was a plan. The next morning, I tried to confront my father. "Dad, is it true? Do you believe what they are saying?" He sighed, avoiding my eyes. "Emily, this family has been through enough. Just let it go." Let it go? He was asking me to surrender my own identity. That evening, during the charity dinner, Grandma introduced Rachel as the true heir of the Carter spirit. The room erupted in applause. I stood there, invisible, clapping for the lie that had replaced me. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something. An envelope falling from Lydia's purse, marked with my mother's initials. That was the moment I stopped being silent. Because whatever was inside that envelope was about to change everything. After that night, nothing felt the same. The rumor about me spread like perfume, soft, invisible, but everywhere. I could feel it in the way people's eyes lingered, in how conversations would fade when I entered a room. The Carters were experts at pretending everything was fine, but silence, I learned, could be its own kind of violence. The next morning's brunch was held in the garden. Sunlight spilled over the white tablecloths, but all I felt was the weight of hidden stares. Grandma Margaret sat at the head of the table, her pearls gleaming, her voice crisp as she asked Rachel about her upcoming engagement. Rachel giggled, playing the part of the perfect granddaughter. When I tried to join in, Grandma's tone turned sharp. "Emily," she said, without even looking at me, "why don't you take a plate to the staff? They've been working all morning." For a second, I thought she was joking. But then I saw Lydia's smirk, calm, deliberate. Everyone was watching. My father stayed silent. Aunt Claire's fork clinked against her glass, uncomfortable. I smiled tightly, picked up the plate, and walked away. My chest burned. I could feel the pity in some eyes, and the satisfaction in others. Later, inside the mansion, I overheard Rachel laughing with her friends. "Did you see her face? Poor Emily, serving food like she works here." Lydia's voice joined in, soft but sharp. "She's lucky we even let her attend." I froze behind the doorway, my hands trembling. I wanted to shout, to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. "Why are you doing this to me?" That evening, I escaped to my mother's old garden, the only place in that estate that still felt like mine. Aunt Claire found me there. "Emily," she said quietly, "you need to be careful. There's more going on than you know." I looked up at her, desperate. "You mean the rumor?" She nodded. "Your grandmother, she's protecting someone. But it's not you." Before I could ask more, she walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night, the humiliation continued. During the evening toast, Grandma thanked everyone by name, everyone except me. Even Ethan, my cousin, looked at me helplessly. I raised my glass anyway, pretending not to notice. But my patience was wearing thin. The anger I'd buried for years was starting to boil. After dinner, Lydia approached me near the grand staircase. Her perfume was heavy, her tone light. You shouldn't take things so personally, dear. Family can be complicated. I met her eyes. You started this rumor, didn't you? She smiled faintly. Rumors only spread if there's truth to them. That line hit me like a slap. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but she turned and glided away before I could speak. As the night dragged on, I began noticing small details, my name missing from place cards, whispered jokes, even servants avoiding me. It was as if I had become invisible in my own home. By the time the reunion's closing dinner was announced, I wasn't the same girl who arrived trying to earn love. I was quieter now, colder, watching, waiting. Then, just before I went to bed, I found it, the same envelope that had fallen from Lydia's purse, now slipped under my door. My heart pounded as I picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter in my mother's handwriting. And at the bottom, in faded ink, it said, "If you're reading this, the truth has finally come for them." That was the moment I knew something irreversible was about to happen. The letter shook in my hands as I read my mother's handwriting, uneven, hurried, but full of pain. "If you're reading this, then you've seen how far they'll go to bury the truth. Lydia forged your father's signature years ago to claim your mother's inheritance. Your grandmother knew, and stayed silent. Protect yourself, Emily. They'll deny everything, even you." My breath caught. My heart hammered so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. It all made sense now. The cold stares, the missing name on the invitation, the whispers about my bloodline. They weren't doubting who I was by accident. They were erasing me on purpose. That night, I sat alone in my room while laughter echoed downstairs. My family, was celebrating the legacy they had built by destroying mine. When morning came, Grandma announced a special family meeting. Everyone gathered in the grand hall, chandeliers blazing, portraits of our ancestors looking down like silent witnesses. Lydia stood beside Grandma, her arm linked with Rachel's. I took a seat in the back, already feeling the weight of what was coming. "Before we end this beautiful reunion," Grandma began, her voice firm, "I want to make an important announcement." She held up a cream envelope, the same kind that held the inheritance documents. "It's time to officially pass down certain responsibilities and family properties to the next generation." Rachel's smile widened. Lydia looked triumphant. I waited, foolishly, for my name. But it never came. "Rachel Carter," Grandma declared proudly, "will inherit the Carter estate and all associated trusts. She represents the grace and spirit of this family." There was applause, loud, rehearsed, suffocating. I felt my stomach twist. My mouth went dry. "What about me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room went still. Grandma turned slowly, her eyes cold. "Emily, dear, we've discussed this. You've chosen a different path. You're an artist, not a businesswoman. We only want what's best for you." Lydia added sweetly, "Besides, this is all about preserving bloodlines. You wouldn't understand the responsibility that comes with that." I could barely breathe. "Bloodlines?" I whispered. "You mean, you actually believe those lies?" No one spoke. Not even my father. He just looked away. My throat burned. "So that's it? You erased my mother, and now me too." "Enough," Grandma snapped. "Don't embarrass yourself." Her words hit me harder than a slap. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I stood, shaking, but steady enough to meet her gaze. "I'm not the one embarrassing myself," I said quietly. "You are." Lydia gasped, pretending to be offended. "How dare you speak to your grandmother like that?" I turned to her. "You stole what wasn't yours. You forged my father's signature." "I know everything." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Grandma's eyes flashed with something, fear, maybe, before she regained her composure. "That's a dangerous accusation," she said sharply. "You should be careful with your words." "Then prove me wrong," I said. "Show everyone the original documents." Silence. Lydia forced a laugh. "Oh, Emily, still chasing ghosts. This is exactly why your mother never—" "Don't you dare speak about my mother," I snapped. For a moment, no one moved. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then Grandma lifted her hand, graceful, controlled, and said, "I think it's best you leave. You're clearly not well." I stared at her, waiting for my father to say something. Anything. But he didn't. Instead, he said softly, "Emily, let's not make a scene." That was it. The final fracture. I walked out of that mansion with every step echoing like a goodbye. Outside, the evening air hit my face, cold and sharp. I stood there beneath the old oak tree, the same one where my mother used to read to me, and finally let the tears fall. For years, I had tried to be good, to earn love, to prove I belonged. And for what? To be cast out like a stranger while liars inherited my mother's life? I felt something shift inside me that night, something quiet, dangerous, and unstoppable. No more silence. No more pretending. They had built their empire on lies, and I finally had the proof. The letter was my weapon, and their arrogance would be their downfall. I wiped my tears, folded the letter carefully, and whispered to the wind. They wanted to erase me, but now they'll remember my name. And in that whisper, my heartbreak turned into purpose. It wasn't grief anymore. It was the beginning of revenge. When you've been thrown out of your own life, the only thing left to do is gather the pieces and make them speak. I started small. First, I folded that letter into the lining of my coat and carried it everywhere like a secret talisman. I needed proof that would survive their excuses. The letter alone mattered, but it could be dismissed as a madwoman's scribble. So I did what my grief taught me to do. I got practical. Ethan was the first person I trusted. He met me at a quiet cafe, eyes soft but sharp. "You really found this?" he asked, hands wrapped around his cup. "Yes," I whispered. "And it names names." He didn't flinch. "We'll get this verified," he said. "Forensic handwriting. Bank records. Witnesses. We won't rush in blind." Aunt Claire came next. She'd always been blunt, the only one who'd ever hinted that something was wrong. When I showed her the letter, she put her hand over mine and said, "You don't have to do this alone." Her voice trembled, and for the first time since the reunion, I felt not completely alone. I spent weeks rebuilding a case. I copied every document I could find, bills, old letters, the will draft I'd found hidden in an old desk. I paid a private investigator with the last of my savings to pull bank records showing Lydia's suspicious transfers. I tracked down the long-retired housekeeper who remembered a night Lydia had insisted on staying late with some papers. She agreed to talk, quietly, privately, and her testimony fit into the gaps like a grim puzzle piece. There was fear in every step, fear of being sued, fear of being gaslit back into silence, fear of losing whatever shred of family remained. But fear sharpened me instead of breaking me. I hired a handwriting expert. The report came back with a cold professionalism, forged signature, consistent with Lydia's hand. I copied it, saved it, printed it in triplicate. All of this needed a stage. Private victories mean nothing if no one else hears the truth. I could expose them in a courtroom, but I wanted the moment where faces would change color and whispers would become confessions. I wanted Grandma to feel the same public unraveling she'd gifted me. So I planned for a public reveal. Not violent, not cruel, but undeniable. A recorded reading of the letter paired with the forensic report. Witness statements. Bank records. A short video. My mother's handwriting shown side by side with Lydia's forged scrawl, the housekeeper's statement, the investigator's timeline. Ethan would thread it together. He had an eye for detail and a steady hand with a camera. I prepared contingencies. If they tried to silence me legally, I'd have copies safely distributed to trusted people outside the family. Aunt Claire, Ethan, a lawyer I'd quietly consulted. If they gaslit me, I'd present chain of custody evidence. If they smeared me, I'd release the documents publicly. Every move was about removing their safety nets. At night I rehearsed what I would say, simple, cold, true. No theatrics. I wanted facts to do the tearing. "This is what you did," I would say. "You stole my mother's life. You erased me to hide a lie." I imagined their faces, Lydia's thin smile cracking, Grandma's pearls dulling with shame, my father's silence breaking into anger or regret. But with every plan came the tremor of doubt. Revenge isn't a straight path. It bends with risk. Would revealing everything destroy what family remained? Would it bring justice? Or more betrayal? I lay awake with these questions, feeling both small and enormous at once. The day of the reveal would be at the annual estate meeting, a public signing where the family would be gathered, papers on the table, witnesses present. It was perfect and terrible. I folded the documents one last time, placed them in a small leather folder, and closed my fingers around it like a promise. Then I whispered to myself, steady as a vow. If I walk into that room and silence myself now, I die a second time. And yet, would I really step through the door? The day of the estate meeting felt like standing before a storm I'd called upon myself. The Carter mansion gleamed in the sunlight, polished marble floors, gold-framed portraits, and a silence that felt too controlled. Every chair was occupied. Grandma Margaret at the head of the table, Lydia beside her, Rachel glowing in self-importance, and my father, distant as always, staring at the papers in front of him. I walked in quietly, clutching the leather folder against my chest. All eyes turned toward me, some cold, some curious. "Emily," Grandma said with that familiar thrust in her tone. "This is a private matter. You weren't summoned." "I know," I replied, steadying my voice. "But I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." Lydia let out a soft laugh. "Oh, not this again. We're not doing this." "I'm not asking for permission," I interrupted. A hush fell. Even Rachel stopped smiling. I moved toward the end of the table, laid the folder down, and looked each of them in the eye. "For years, I've been told I don't belong. That I'm not family. That my blood isn't pure enough for the Carter name." I took a slow breath. But the truth has a way of surviving lies. I opened the folder. Inside was the letter, my mother's words, and the supporting documents. Ethan, who had come as a guest assistant, quietly switched on the projector behind me. The room dimmed. On the wall appeared a scan of my mother's letter, her signature clear and trembling. My voice shook as I began to read. "Lydia forged your father's signature years ago to claim your mother's inheritance. Your grandmother knew, and stayed silent." Gasps echoed across the room. My father's hand froze midair. Lydia's smile cracked. "That's absurd." Lydia snapped. "Anyone could have written that." I turned to her. "Except the handwriting expert confirmed it's yours." Ethan clicked to the next slide, a forensic report, signed and stamped. Every word was official, undeniable. Grandma's pearls rattled faintly as she adjusted them, her face paling. This is nonsense. How dare you destroy your own family's name?" I cut in. My voice wasn't trembling anymore. It was sharp, calm, deadly quiet. "You tried to erase me to cover up Lydia's theft. You let them laugh at me, humiliate me, push me out, because admitting the truth would stain your reputation." Lydia stood abruptly. "You have no proof this money even existed." I reached into the folder again. "Then explain these." I laid down the bank statements, dated transfers, the same amount as my mother's estate fund, all leading to Lydia's private account. Rachel's mouth fell open. "Mom," she whispered. Lydia's voice faltered. This isn't." But the housekeeper's recorded voice played next, filling the hall. "She stayed late that night, said she had to finish some documents. Next day, your mother's lawyer resigned suddenly. Everyone knew something wasn't right. Every lie Lydia had crafted began to crumble. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, the sound of power shifting. My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Is this true, Lydia?" Lydia's eyes darted to Grandma. "You said no one would ever find out," she whispered. The words hit the room like thunder. Grandma closed her eyes. "It was for the family," she muttered. "For the family?" I repeated, choking back tears. "You destroyed your own granddaughter's life. And for what? Appearances." I turned toward the door, the letter still in my hand. "You took everything from my mother, and you almost succeeded in taking me too. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever." Lydia collapsed into her chair, silent, exposed. Grandma didn't look at me again. I walked out slowly, the same way I'd left that reunion weeks before, but this time, I wasn't invisible. The whispers that once humiliated me were now their chains. Outside, the air was cold, sharp, clean, like the world had exhaled. Ethan caught up to me, breathless. "You did it," he said softly. I looked back at the mansion, at the faces staring through the window, ashamed, broken, silent. "No," I said quietly. "The truth did." And with that, I walked away, knowing the Carter name would never sound the same again. When I stepped out of the Carter mansion that day, the air felt different, heavier, but cleaner. Behind those tall glass windows, I could still hear fragments of chaos: Lydia crying, Rachel shouting, Grandma's voice breaking into disbelief. For years, I had been their silent scapegoat, their shadow to hide what was rotten beneath their shine. Now the silence they'd built was shattered, replaced by the echo of my mother's truth. Ethan drove me away from the estate, the same long driveway I'd once walked down in tears. This time, I didn't look back in pain. I looked back in closure. The mansion that once made me feel small now looked fragile, a shell of pride that finally cracked open. Within a week, everything began to unravel publicly. Aunt Claire leaked the documents to the family's lawyers. Lydia's forged records became the headline of quiet scandals whispered in business circles. Grandma resigned from her foundation for health reasons. My father tried to reach out, sending messages I couldn't yet read. The world they built on secrecy was collapsing under its own weight. And me? I went back to my art studio, the one place untouched by their cruelty. For the first time in years, I painted not to escape, but to release. Each brushstroke felt like breathing again. I painted my mother's face, strong, graceful, unbroken. I painted the mansion, half in light and half in shadow. And finally, I painted a single word in the corner of the canvas: truth. One afternoon, Aunt Claire visited quietly. She looked at the painting, tears softening her eyes. "Your mother would be proud," she said. I smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for revenge," I replied. "I did it so she could finally rest." Then I added the words that had become my truth. Sometimes, dignity is the loudest form of revenge. The family hasn't invited me to another gathering since, and I don't expect they ever will. But I no longer crave their approval. Respect earned from lies is only humiliation disguised as love. I learned that silence may protect others, but it destroys the one who keeps it. And for too long, I had mistaken obedience for grace. Now, when people mention the Carter family name, they speak of legacy, but they also speak of justice. My mother's letter became part of that justice. Her voice, silenced for decades, had finally been heard through mine. Sometimes, I still think about Grandma, whether she regrets it, whether she understands what she lost. But then I remind myself, regret doesn't always lead to redemption. Some people choose reputation over truth until their last breath. As for me, I chose freedom. In the end, I didn't destroy the family, I just exposed what they had already broken. I left them with their name, their house,